Well, this year's UN Climate Conference is underway on the edge of the Amazon rainforest in Brazil. The talks opened against a background of recent natural disasters linked to global warming. Many leaders are calling for less talk and more action, but reaching consensus will be tough, with some countries sending only low-level delegations and the United States completely absent from this conference. The UN's climate chief is urging the thousands of people attending to work together for the common good.
But friends, let me be clear, in this arena of COP30, your job here is not to fight one another. Your job here is to fight this climate crisis together.
Well, I'm joined now by Joyeeta Gupta. She's a professor of environment and development in the Global South at the Amsterdam Institute for Social Science Research at the University of Amsterdam. Professor, it's good to have you with us. You study how climate change affects countries in the Global South. Many people in the Global South say that they're paying for a crisis that they did not create. Many in the Global North would say that they didn't create it either. So what would fairness in climate funding, what would it actually look like?
Actually, what you're trying to focus on is the fact that in the Global North, we also have a South, and in the Global South, we have a North. And by that, I mean that there are very rich people also in the Global South who copy, in fact, the lifestyles of the Global North. And you have poorer people in the Global North who will also suffer. And that is, I think, what you're referring to. And it's really important to keep that in mind. Having said that, I think the most important thing right now is to try to figure out, is there and can we raise the money to address both the mitigation side of the problem and the climate change adaptation side of the problem. I want to highlight mitigation first, because I think there are two big problems or hoaxes, if you like. And the first one is that we are talking actually about overshoot. We are going to overshoot our targets and then hope to come back to these targets later in this century. And the question is whether when we come back to the same world. In fact, you'll see many, many more such storms in the meanwhile. And the second hoax is the net zero target, which allows companies and countries to keep increasing their emissions while they compensate for that in one way or the other. But it's basically business as usual. And these two are really big problems, and we need to tackle the mitigation side, because otherwise the adaptation side becomes completely and totally so unbelievably expensive, it will be difficult to raise funds for it.
Professor, let me pick up on this hoax that you're talking about. Do you see a part of the problem here, the public awareness campaigns not working? A lot of people all over the world think that even if we do see the global temperature raise, let's say 4 degrees, for example, at some point in the future, we can adapt and we can bring it back down. There's no guarantee that we can fix what we break, right?
There's no guarantee that we can fix what we break. And also we are moving into such a difficult and unpredictable terrain that it's very difficult to say that if a glacier melts, it's going to come back. I doubt it. You know, it could be that after several centuries, some coral reefs may recover or some elements may recover. But the amount of damage that we will cause to people in the current generation and in the coming few generations is substantial. And that is what the International Court of Justice tells us in its advisory opinion that we cannot do, that we have as states a responsibility to prevent significant harm to the system which causes damage to the rights of people to exercise their human rights.
How do you argue then for a global effort, everyone sharing the burden at this point? If you look at Germany, for example, there are many in Germany who say that Germany has tried to make even painful changes to preserve the environment. At the same time, its neighbors, other countries, have not. You can't go it alone. So what's your answer then when a country like Germany says, yeah, we can't hurt ourselves if other people don't help us?
At this point of time, I think there is no time to say we can't take action if nobody else does. I think every single country will be held accountable by the public in the future, if not currently. And so I really sincerely think that every country has to do its bit. What I'm really worried about is that many nation states in the global north are hiding behind their voters. They're arguing that voters do not want to take climate action and that they're voting in governments that do not believe in climate action. A lot of that is the result of disinformation campaigns that have their roots in misinformation and malinformation campaigns that go back to the 1950s. But today, with the rise of disinformation and with the rise of social media and AI, you're seeing that this misinformation is sort of being accelerated, and it's being amplified by these social media processes, and that creates a massive backlash to action on climate change. And that is something that in democratic societies we're not ready for. We're just focusing on the short term wins and not the fact that we are responsible internationally as well as long term goals.
Professor Gupta, fascinating talking with you. We will be following the meeting in Brazil to see what, if anything, comes out of it. I appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
DW's chief climate reporter Louise Osborne is with me here in the studio to talk about this more. Good to see you, Louise. So, as we just heard there, Brazil is a country of climate contradictions, isn't it? So what challenges does that present when it comes to driving forward this year's really important climate negotiations?
I mean, it's super complicated. I mean, Brazil is looking at oil at the moment to try to expand its economy, to give jobs to its people, that kind of thing. And they have insisted that they are going to use at least some of that money to help transition the economy from what it is at the moment to a sustainable green economy.
That does seem like a bit of a contradiction.
And it's been seen as a massive hypocrisy when it's also leading the climate conference itself. But saying all that, they are still in a good position. As a developing country themselves and also an emerging and big economy, they are able to bridge the gap then between industrialised countries and developing countries, and this is usually where a lot of the sticking points are. So in that way, they are seen as a possible host to bring forward negotiations in a way that hasn't been done over the past few years.
So this is a big issue, isn't it? The role of developing and developed. And Brazil, as a developing country, as you're saying, says it's the responsibility of industrialised nations to move away from fossil fuels first, given that they're the big polluters. What can Brazil do, though, to actually drive that message home at this COP?
I mean, they're doing it even by having the COP where it is. I mean, it's at the heart of the Amazon, one of the places that is being most impacted by the climate crisis. They're trying to give more voice to the developing nations this time around and to indigenous communities as well, which is a big step forward. And super important because the industrialised nations are historically responsible for the climate crisis. They were able to grow and develop using fossil fuels, and now they're calling on developing nations to do it otherwise. The US, for example, is the biggest historical emitter. OK, they are not looking at moving away from fossil fuels at the moment, but countries like the UK, for example, built its wealth on fossil fuels and is now being able to move away from those. Developing nations need help and support to do the same. The negotiations are based around this idea of common but differentiated responsibility, which is basically the idea that every nation has the responsibility to tackle the climate crisis, but industrialised nations have more of a responsibility because they have been able to move forward with fossil fuels.
And so what is it that those industrialised nations can do to help the developing countries move forward to grow without fossil fuels?
I mean, the biggest answer is money. You have, for example, the developing nations have put forward targets for moving away from fossil fuels that are conditional then on the support of industrialised nations. So last year, for example, climate finance was the big part of the agenda. Industrialised countries agreed to give developing nations more money to try to do that. Not enough, but moving in that direction. You also need to look at technology transfer to developing nations and also help to secure investment, because at the moment, those countries are not always seen as secure investment places for businesses.
DW's chief climate reporter, Louise Osborne. Louise, thank you so much.